All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. Thank you. Thank you. All right. This is going to be interactive today. So if you can share your video, if you're in a place where you can share your video, it would be greatly appreciated. Um, Otherwise, it's just going to be Fabian and I chatting, and I'm sure we can have some fun, but we'd love audience participation. This is more of a workshop and less of a lecture. So come in with your ideas. Show your smiling faces if you can, and let's have some fun. Who do we have here? Philip, hi, how are you? Are you a founder?
Yes, I am.
Give us your 15-second pitch. Go.
Yeah, so I'm a real estate broker and I founded Smoover to transform real estate and providing renters, buyers, sellers, and investors of real estate a fully digital end-to-end transaction experience.
What do you think, Fabian?
Well, I think for being put on the spot, this was pretty flawless.
Pretty flawless. I mean, it was...
Why don't you sit in for me, Philip, and do the rest? So, Philip, let's talk about branding.
I'm fired. Yep. Everybody else here, who else is a founder? Who else is a founder? Come off of mute and say hi. Introduce yourself. Don't be shy.
The lively bunch this morning. They must all be in California like me. It's like 8 a.m. That's what's going on.
That's what's going on. So I'm a growth person, and Fabian is a branding person. So maybe we find our middle ground on areas to talk about. But for the founders out there, you have an audience of 27 people right now. If you want to come off of mute, pitch your company. We'll give you feedback on the pitch. Anybody? Philip, you can't go a second time. I'm sorry. Deborah, are you a founder?
Yes, I am.
Tell us about your company.
So I'm Deborah Gustoni. I'm the founder of Satea. We are a DC-based, women-owned, and socially conscious wellness brand, consumer goods brand, focused on wellness tea and matcha products using the butterfly pea flower ingredient.
I love matcha. It's very expensive, and so we buy this little bag, and we're always running out. We're like, where's the matcha? If we don't get it, it's a problem in the morning.
So have you tried a blue matcha? Because that's what I have.
No, haven't tried it actually.
There you go.
Are you doing any of the in-person events at DC Startup Week?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to do a little pop-up on Thursday morning.
Okay.
At the Industrials location.
Perfect.
So if you come around at 8:30 a.m. until 11, I'll be sampling blue tea and blue matcha. So
all right.
Everybody's welcome.
Yay, thank you. My team at Velocity Growth is all in town, so we will check it out. So listen, we're going to get this thing kicked off here. I am the co-panelist here with Fabian Geyrhalter. I'm going to introduce Fabian, and I'll give you a quick blurb about myself as well. Maybe I'll go first because, Fabian, if I tell your bio first, then mine's going to look like just not cool and exciting. So I'm Craig, founder and CEO of Velocity Growth. We help startups go to market with marketing strategies. We have a whole set of training programs, many of which are free, how-to guides on how to grow your startup. And we also have an in-house growth agency where we do hands-on work to help startups grow. And I am joined by Fabian Geyrhalter, longtime friend, whom I actually met through the startup ecosystem as well out in California. Fabian is a multi-time best-selling author on branding, has 3 amazing books on the topic of branding. Branding is not something that I considered myself an expert in, but the way that he is able to explain the value and importance of a brand and also give you the tactics to actually produce something with your brand that's meaningful and impactful is really, really impressive. Fabian, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Why don't you give your quick bio and I guess how you got here, and then we'll dive in. And audience, This is going to be interactive, so we're going to call on you. We want questions, and we want this to be a discussion.
That is super important. Yeah, I didn't come here with one of my canned speeches this morning, so I want to make sure that there's going to be the most value possible for you. So I mean, look, my bio. I'm a trained graphic designer / creative director. Went through a couple companies, got my green card, started my agency. 8 years or 12 years later, realized that agencies are really a thing of the past. Started a consultancy, working the first 8 years solely with founders in the startup ecosystem, and now lately mainly with Fortune 5000s, mid-sized companies on brand transformations. Wrote a couple of books along the way, and I really love branding. It's strange. It can happen to anyone. Maybe it happens to you too after this, who knows? But I really, really enjoy it. I love the idea of creating something from scratch and then seeing it hopefully catch on. Right, so I've been a creator all my life. Actually started a product company earlier this year. So I'm struggling just like you right now. I got the brand down, that's good, but like bringing a product to market is freaking
Brand is very good, and it's a cool product. I'll share a link in a second.
Thank you. So I'm in the midst of it. I'm in the middle of it. I've got the bug, right? But I talk about branding. I write about branding. I interview founders about branding. So I have a podcast called Hitting the Mark, which I would love for you to hit up. Not in a selfish manner, because I get absolutely nothing out of it. I don't even have sponsorship on it. But the reason why I think you might want to do that is because you can listen to marketers like Craig or brand people like myself forever, but you actually want to hear it from the founders. Like, how did they do it, and how important was brand thinking or getting clarity on their brand? Like, how did that change the trajectory of a business? And I mean, I'm talking to founders of Happy Socks and JetBlue and Liquid Death. I mean, those are not, like the small startups. Those are actually really kick-ass brands. And these founders talk to me super honestly about like branding and what it meant to them and all of that. So that's me. That's me in a nutshell. I don't know, Craig. You could have most probably done much better in this, but I think your intro was already very nice.
You did it. I think you did it. Okay, so let's dive in. So I have a couple questions that are kind of here in advance for Fabian, and then I want to open it up and have a discussion amongst the group here. But the couple burning questions that I have, I'd love to get your thoughts on. So here's the first one, Fabian, and hopefully this isn't too fluffy for you, but how do you quantify the importance of a brand for a startup?
That's the one question any marketer would always.
I know, but come on,
right? It's like show me the KPIs, man. What you do there is like hocus pocus, but show me the KPIs. No, it's a very legit question, right? Look, really, like, how do you quantify anything? You quantify it by the success that it has. And marketing is easy because you can measure it, right? Branding is harder to measure, but when you think about it, the question with your company is, what is the response that you seek and what is the response that you get, right? That's the same thing when you put the product out, right? Like, it's the same when you put the brand out. Do people engage with the brand? Do people love the brand? Do people come and defend your brand, right? When you do something that is kind of like on the edge and people are like, giving you crap online, and suddenly there are people rising up with the fist in the air saying, no, we love this brand. They're doing it right. They stand for something, whatever it is, right? I think that idea of measuring a brand success, look, I brought up Liquid Death, right? Liquid Death is water. Okay, water is in most of the world, or a majority of the world, it is salt water, canned water, bottled water is a commodity, complete commodity, right? If you're selling water and people get tattoos of your water brand and they go completely apeshit over your water, and it takes over Whole Foods and 7-Elevens and everything, what is that? That's branding. It's only, I mean, this entire thing is an entire brand game. And so the question is, how do you quantify it? It's really, how important do you think it would be for you to differentiate? If you're a complete commodity product out there, D2C, B2C, branding is going to be extremely important. If you're in the B2B space, like Philip, and you're putting out a service, and you're the only company that actually is design focused, is user focused, actually tells an amazing brand story, and is extremely likable on top of having a good service, guess what? You're most probably going to attract people much faster. So how can you quantify it? That's how you quantify it, right? It's really, where do you want to be? How far do you want to push?
That is such an interesting example, and I've seen liquid death everywhere, and I didn't even realize it was water until like I looked at it. I think I'd heard it on your podcast, but then when you look at it, it's like, oh my God, they're selling water. Like they're scaling this global company selling water.
And I mean, you know, look, everyone should listen to the episode because I had him on the pod, but it's amazing. I mean, he's an art center grad like myself, Art Center College of Design in Pasadena here. And he basically said, look, every single water brand or good for you product is the exact same, right? It all looks exactly the same. It's all the good for you branding. And he's like, I want punk rockers, and I want like the kids that are at shows have something that looks like a beer can and be hydrated and not necessarily drink alcohol, because guess what? A lot of people don't want to or need to or shouldn't. And that's what I want to do. And guess what? I want to save the planet while I'm doing it, because plastic kills the planet. And so any other company like a Procter & Gamble, and actually this could be a really good lesson for all of us here. Every company, you know, like Procter & Gamble, all the big ones that really have like 80-90% of the market space, they would say, okay, good. So it's like good for the environment. It's good for you. We know the formula, how this needs to look, how it needs to talk. And he's like, we're not even going to talk about this. We're just going to be kick-ass punk rock. We call it liquid death. And we're going to say it's going to kill your thirst. And we're going to say you're going to give away your soul if you become part of our loyalty program. And you actually have to sign a DocuSign online, which you do, which is hilarious. And people do. And we're going to make it the most fun, crazy out there brand. And what would an investor say? They would say, like, this is a small market. I'm not going to invest in this. This is a niche market. Like, I'm not going to go for that. But he knew, he's like, sooner or later, we're going to be in Whole Foods. We're going to be everywhere. And Whole Foods, I mean, there are people that have petitions against liquid death. It's like, have you seen, you know, it's like they're selling water that talks about death, and it's like killing people. And it's just, but it's hilarious. But that's how you create an amazing brand. And look, I'm not saying it's the perfect thing to do. It's not my type of environment. But from a brand story, it's one of those things where a Procter & Gamble can never have the grit to do something like that. They could never, they just cannot. Like, all your largest competitors can never do what you can do right now. And I think that's, I mean, that to me is everything with startup branding, right? You can be bold, you can be unapologetic, you can be transparent, you can be loud, you can be different, you can be a liquid death, right? You can have tons of attitude. The big ones can't have that. They can't, right? And what's the worst that can happen to you? Fail? Isn't that a great thing? It's like, whatever. It's right. Like fail forwards. It's like, at least you failed with attitude. Well, then tone it down and restart. It's all fine, right? But it's like that idea of and most startups just don't do it because they're scared. Yeah. And I agree, Deborah, personal is huge. Be personal, right? Like the founders that I talk to, that's, you know, the more they show up on Instagram, the more they talk about their failures with a company. And, you know, there's a company called Loop Mission, L-O-O-P Mission up in Canada. They basically upcycle, deformed fruits and vegetables. You know, like they're, you know, we know about all of that stuff, but they make juices out of it. They make gin out of it. They make breakfast. I don't know. They make everything out of it, candles, whatever, right? And it sounds so normal, but the way that they do it is if you just follow their Instagram, it's a lesson in branding of how transparent they are and how, like, their entire factory line broke down one day. Guess what? They're out there with cameras going for it. They show the CEO just packing it. They show them feeding their kids at like freaking 2 a.m. and they're like, this is what we do. This is real, right? Procter & Gamble, won't do that, right? And so I think that that's, to Deborah, to your point, that you put in chat, and everyone just go into chat. It's like, that is something that I think is if you lean into that, at least for the first 6 to 12 months, that's super big. But hey, Craig, I promised you, this is about you. This is not about me.
This is not about me. So, and actually, isn't your book called
Me?
No.
Lesson in branding?
It's all about them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Fabian, you had mentioned something that really resonated with me earlier, which was that when you have a great brand like a Liquid Death, like people might be shouting about it, right? It's gonna pump people up, and maybe not everybody loves it, but they're taking a stance. One thing that I observed, so Fabian designed our logo for Velocity Growth. Now, what we had, and did the name. So, but before this, we were called Growth University, and that was just a name that like we had haphazardly chosen. There was no strategy behind it. Like my MVP for this current company, I mean, I had a full-time job at the time, so I wasn't thinking about branding. I wasn't thinking about naming. So we used Growth University because we had the domain, and we kind of got pushed into it. Nobody liked it. The questions that we got, there was never any like, hey, I love Growth University. It's such a cool name. It was, are you accredited? Where's your university located? What classes does your university offer? And it quite literally just caused a bunch of confusion, and we were all self-conscious about the name. We're getting comments from people now that they love the name Velocity Growth. Velocity and growth goes together. So at a micro level, these things are actually very, very, very important. I feel it as a founder, the difference between having what I would consider a bad brand and a great brand. So here's my question to you, and then I'd love to open it up for others. So the second question I had for you, Fabian, is what characteristics do you think are important or make up a good brand for a very, very early stage startup? Or how much should these guys be thinking about that now?
Yeah, I mean, it's so many questions in one. And I mean, in the end, you know, when I talked about being bold, I think actually that is one of the biggest characteristics, right? Like be super transparent, be super bold, be yourself, be different, not for the sake of being different, but because you can, right? Like that to me, from a brand strategy perspective, is one of the most important things that you need to focus on with an early brand. And guilty as charged, now that I'm running my own little side gig as a product startup, oh my God, is it hard? Like here I am on the pedestal. I'm like, do this and do this and do this. But it is so hard to constantly remind yourself and slap yourself on the fingers as you start like putting out an Instagram and doing whatever you do, right? To really focus. You have to be focused on who you are as a brand. And I think, and I talk about this quite a bit with my own brand, with my consultancy, my brand consultancy, is like I create clarity, right, and focus. And I think that's really it. The founders that are very focused on, this is our story, this is our attitude, these are the people that we really want to love us, right? Like there are only a couple of people. If there's an audience of 100, there are 2 people that we made this product for, this service for, this offering for. And every founder knows that, right? Here are these 2 people, right? We need them to love us, right? And if you have a razor sharp focus on how can you get the brand, and that goes back to Craig's point about what everyone thinks about branding, right? And it's completely true. It's the logo, it's the name, it's the colors, it's the visual, it's how you talk. But all of that in the end needs to constantly swing with that compass of, we need to get these couple of people to really love us. And there's always a flip side, right? On the other side, there are all these people that are going to hate you. Great. Right? The first time I got my haters, again, super easy to say, but with my startup, I so horrendously failed in the beginning, which I never talk publicly about, especially when it's recorded. Wait, that's what this is. What am I doing? Rewind.
Give us.
Anyway,
It's
my startup
hard,
was
right?
perfect from the beginning.
Yes.
No, but you know, like what happened is I did absolutely. I said, I've got a product that is completely revolutionary and different, that it could cost anything because my market has money, right? And so I launched a product that was like $4,000 or something like that, right? And in the end, that was just about 400% too much, right? And people just went crazy over like, like people literally on social media wrote me, how can you sleep at night? And I'm like, what? Because I put a product out there? You're like, you don't have to buy it for crying out loud. What?
It was because of the price?
Because of the price. They're like, how can you sleep at night? And I'm like, what do you mean? That's how much it costs me to produce. I'm not even making money. I'm like a startup. I don't know what I'm doing. Help, right? But it was so funny. It's like, so, but in the future, right? When you have a feasible product, which we now will have in a month from now, but that idea of, it's okay if people hate on you, because they do it because you have an attitude and you stand for something and you bring certain values out there and you are a very specifically positioned brand. It's totally okay to do that. All right, do we have questions there?
We're starting to get some questions. First of all, Maisie, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Thank you for the feedback. Did VJ had mentioned any good resources or templates to start charting a brand strategy? I don't know if you're sharing stuff, or if you want to point folks to resources. We can also do that at the end. We can send some links around as well.
Yeah, there are a couple of things. So what would be a good resource to start charting a brand strategy? So there's one resource that is for free and it's really simple. And I tell every startup founder, do that immediately. And that is called a positioning statement. And you write that. And a positioning statement is very much like a business plan on a napkin. It's one sentence, right? But it's a brand plan. And so the positioning statement goes something like, like this: to, and then you fill in whatever your audience is. Our product is the category, whatever the category is, right? Food and beverage or snack or, whatever, business services, legal services, that provides. And then you write all of the benefits. And by the way, you can find this on my website, but you can also just search it online. Then you write down all the benefits. And then the most important thing, and that's the part where you really need to sit down and think deep, is because. Thanks, Craig. Craig just put it in there. And
we're going into the archives, Fabian. We're going into the archives of the blog.
I like that. Yeah. And then at the very end of it, so to this audience, we are the following, that provides the following benefits because. And this is kind of it. And so when you basically say, this is basically why does your brand exist? Outside of the features and benefits and the audience and right, but why at the heart does your brand exist? And it goes back to the Simon Sinek thing of why, right? Ask why. And when I do this, I do brand strategy sessions with my clients, it's a one-day thing. And when I do it with them, we spend at least half of these 8 hours on that positioning statement. We do it in the beginning and we do it at the end. So it's one sentence, but you can write it down in 3 minutes and get it over with, but then you don't care about your brand. Or you can write it over and over and change the because, that why of your company so often that in the end you're like, oh my God, this is a tagline. This is everything. This is what we are. This is our beating heart. This is our true north. This is put in every single brand jargon word in there, right? That's it. But it's wonderful. It's extremely empowering when you actually know your why. And so that to me is something that anyone can do. Other than that, I do one-day sessions, which usually is outpriced of early stage startup founders. I also have something called eResonate, which is an online course that you can take, where you basically go through all of the strategy. And I'm not here to sell you anything, but that's very early stage startup, position.
The course is really good. We took the course as a group, and the course gives you all the materials as well. So I'll dig up that, or Fabian, maybe you've got the link to eResonate. Sure. Kimberly had asked, we're rebranding now. What are good strategies for communicating the rebrand externally and to the customer?
And internally. Right?
Oh, interesting. Right.
So may I ask a follow-up to that? How big is your company when you're doing the rebrand right now?
Can I come off?
Yes, please.
Okay. We are early stage. We're also pioneering a solution, and we're now at this inflection point where our solution is coming in right at a great pain point with our customers. Even though pain points already been there. And so we've been in the market 5 years, but again, pioneering, like going against the grain of their normal solution. And so, so we've been in the market 5 years. I'm sorry, what's the part B to your
No.
question?
So if you've been around for 5 years, like how many employees do you have right now? Are you still very
Still a
small?
small team, 5 team
Okay,
members.
so no big internal onboarding. That's why you didn't ask that, but you asked
Yeah,
maybe for the
yeah.
outside. Yes, okay. So I think the rebranding is usually a rebranding exercise is usually not that. It's usually not an exercise. It's usually something that really goes deep, right? So you really looked at, why do we do this, right? Like, why do we look different now? How are we better positioned? What story do we tell, right? And you've got some depth in it, I assume. And if you do, this is a really good time where I would schedule the rebranding announcement either around a big product release, or a feature release, or something where you can kind of like cling on to something else and make a bigger story out of it, right? And if the ones that just read about the rebranding, they suddenly learn more about the features, and the ones that are just interested in the feature, they suddenly learn more about the brand. So you can piggyback on that. Or if you have absolutely nothing to announce for like 6 months, right? Like, then make it a case where you just put a lot of emphasis on, you have grown. Right? Like, the reason why you do the rebranding is not because you got it wrong the first time, like everyone else, right, and it set you back, and like you didn't hire a professional, whatever every startup did, right? Like, that's not the story, but the story is, of course, how much your product has gained traction. Like how the brand has not been growing alongside the product. And now it was time for us to really showcase ourselves at our true colors, and then share your values, share what you stand for, share the fist in the air moment of the founders in the beginning, and how this carries still on. And it's an amazing time to like reignite that fire that all of these current customers have never felt, because they just buy into that one value prop, right? But I think it's a really cool moment to do that. And so that's what I would use it for. How you do it from a tactical point of view, I'm not a big believer in this, like, hey, let's slowly get people excited about our rebrand. No, people don't care. I mean, yes, hopefully they read it and then they care about your brand more, but they don't care about, in 9 days, we have something big to announce, and they're getting so excited that you finally fixed the feature that they always wanted, right? And then it's like, we're now green and not yellow, and everyone's like, oh, that's a bummer. So I would not make it a big countdown. I would just say, look, on one day, you have you give a heads up to, you don't have a board of directors at this point, most probably, so it's still a small team. So you give a heads up to all of your key customers, right? The ones that are the diehard fans, and say, listen, you've been with us since day one, or you are an owner of our most important or biggest product suite, or whatever it is, and because of that, we wanted you to know before we share this with the public. We're having a big thing coming up tomorrow. We're really proud of it. Without you, we could have never done this, right? So make them feel like elevated, they're part of it. And then the next day, you do an email blast, you do a social blast. Obviously, I mean, I don't know if anyone still puts anything on the wire. I love the wire. It's such a good word. But if anyone it does any PR like that, no one's going to pick it up. Why would they write about it? I would say, like, save the money on the PR part, unless the branding is done by myself and it's so revolutionary. No, I'm joking. No, but unless, like, there's something again tied in with the branding that's a really big story, where you feel like, a Forbes or a Fast Company, they would write about it because it's so going against the grain. But if it's just a regular rebrand, I wouldn't make a big PR push out of it.
Okay.
Love it.
You.
We have another
Very
question.
helpful.
Thanks, Fabian. Great question, Kimberly. Thank you. Zaraya had asked, what advice would you give someone who is service-based and basically branding themselves?
Well, the good news is I'm service-based. Craig is service-based. There are a lot of service-based people around here. I might have to put you a little bit more on the spot, Zaraya, because service-based can be so much, right? You can be service-based and run a franchise with like 5,000 employees. You can be service-based and be a freelancer writing copy. Like, I don't know what you do. So either via chat or if you go on mute, if you can tell me a little bit of context of what exactly you do service-based, that would be helpful to make it more specific for you. I see Soraya is typing. She's focusing. The pressure is on. Will there be a typo? Let's see.
I already made it. My last, I shared the wrong LinkedIn profile for myself. It's always great when that happens.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Almost finished getting my EA. So taxes for small business. Woo! Okay. So so first of all, I am so grateful having you participate in a branding panel, right? Because you are doing taxes.
Yes, thank you.
I mean, you are doing taxes, and someone who is doing taxes for small businesses to participate in a panel about the importance of branding, you are halfway there. You are, I mean, this is like, you're already a step ahead. And I'm totally serious about this. Let me give you an example. I interviewed a founder on my show who ran a law firm for small businesses. It's related, a little more scary, but it's related, right? It's basically boring stuff that you need someone else to handle who actually knows what they're doing so that you can have a better business, right? It's basically, that's what it is, right? And so he was going completely 100% against the grain of what any law firm should do. Every law firm in San Diego where he was stationed with his company, they hated him. Everyone hated him. He did everything against how it usually is done. He had on his website, so he basically said, look, we're people like you, right? And you know, like, we're lawyers, but we're actually people like you. And that was the whole thing. So he had, what did he call it on the website where you had all of your deposition papers, all of your like legal stuff? He called it legal shit. And he said, "Oh yeah, just go to the legal shit on the website." You know, it's like,
That
it's
is
like, oh my
really awesome.
God.
That's
Because
so bold.
so the thing is, so what he
I
did,
love that.
and I'm not saying that you need to go that bold, but I just want to set the stage for you being able to differentiate. Of course, you know, like I'm kind of like, you know, like I like companies that are completely crazy out there, right? Because then the ones who say, I'm going to be like that, they're just going 20% there, and that's already great, right? Because they're so extreme. But he just talked to enough, and again, knowing your audience, right? Having empathy and really knowing who are these people. And he really understood that startup founders just say, where's that legal shit? Like, where's that stuff? Like, I don't care. Like, just get it out of the way, have someone deal with it, and let's make sure it's done correctly, right? And so, look, I got my tax return yesterday. I would lie if I would say that I read it. I quickly briefed through it. I'm selling a house right now, and I'm buying a house right now. So I've got a lot of documents. I just scanned through it, and I have complete trust in my accountant and my tax person to do it right, right? So I think every CPA looks exactly the same. Every CPA's website has been designed in 1990 or potentially 1991. That's it. That's the time span, right? Or at least it looks like it. There are templates for tax, businesses, how to design your website. They all look exactly the same. So I would start, if you're working with small businesses, I don't think that's enough of a niche.
Okay.
So if I would be able to design your business right now, and then Craig can jump in because I would love for his 2 cents on that, I would first say, okay, small business is much too large. What small businesses do you personally love working with? Like, who are the kind of founders, who are the kind of CEOs, who are the kind of CFOs that you love working with? What companies do you actually want to support with your services, right? And then you will understand these people really, really well. And then when you understand them, you can start repeating their words. So some of the smartest lines that I ever wrote, copy, and I'm not a copywriter, but with branding, sometimes you have to write a quick line, right? Are one-to-one coming out of my clients' mouths. Because we are so close to what we do in the service business that you will always say, hey, Soraya, what do you do? Oh, I do taxes for small businesses. I'm like, great, Soraya, thanks. Moving on, right? But
Right,
that's
right.
all. That's all you do, right? So if someone would ask me, Fabian, what do you do? And I say, oh, I do branding for mid-sized to large companies. They're like, okay, great, bye. Right? Like there's nothing there, right? But if I say, oh, I create clarity and focus for founders so they can actually create a brand out of the business. It's like, whoa, okay, well, tell me more, or whatever I would say, right? There needs to be this tell me more moment. And that's where I would start, and I would go against the grain, and I would be very personable, and I would only cater to them, and you will become the only accountant that they will recommend to all the others that are like them, right? Craig.
I mean, I think this is super interesting. You have to decommoditize your offering, right? Like there's a million people doing branding or doing marketing services or doing accounting or doing legal work, right? Well, so the brand is obviously going to be hugely important, but also the unique thing that you bring to the market, right? So if somebody asks me, hey, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I run growth for startups. Okay, so do a bunch of other people. You can go on LinkedIn and find like heads of growth or other marketers or agencies. We compete against agencies all the time. We don't generally refer to ourselves as an agency, even though we're doing hands-on work. I guess now we've started to, but we've never thought of it that way, because what we do is we do holistic growth. Well, what the hell does that mean? It means that we don't come in with a point of view. We leverage experimentation to figure out what's going to help you grow versus what everybody else does. And they say, you need to go and do this thing. We're like, I don't know. Somebody asked me, you've got 20 years growing companies. How would I grow my startup? And I look them in the eye and I say, I don't know, but here's how I would think about going to do that. And once we have that conversation, it level sets. I'm a human, you're a human. We take the commoditized piece of that business completely out of the picture. And now it's a very direct conversation about the exact things that we could do, or that Fabian could do, or that you can do to help the person who needs your service. And it's just the packaging up of that is the way that we try to make that a differentiator. And to Fabian's point, you go against the grain, which is a great podcast, by the way. Marketing Against the Grain is by two people at HubSpot. Kieran Flanagan is one of them. And it's a fantastic podcast that talks a lot about this type of stuff, but for marketing.
Great.
And
Thank you,
just-
guys. Oh.
Well, to wrap it up, I think that when you do all of these things, then it's going to be easy for you to visually, right, to with the name and with your visuals to also stand out, because now you actually know a reason why you would want to stand out, because you have a specific audience. You talk to them in a specific way. The name needs to reflect that, right? The logo needs to speak to that. And I think that's the cool thing with branding is once you have that focus and the clarity around like what you actually do, for whom you do it, and what your brand positioning is in the marketplace, then everything else kind of falls from there. Oh, that makes sense. I know what kind of name I need now. I know what kind of colors, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, awesome. So there was another question from Sonal, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, whom asked, any good prompts you recommend to help us really start thinking about our why?
Huh. Any good prompts? Well, actually, there's a good prompt. There's a really good prompt. It's really weird, and bear with me, but it's at the end of the session, so it's okay. You can bear with me. You made it that far. It's all right. There's this thing that I do with founders, and it kind of freaks them out because they thought, oh, finally, we have a brand guide. It's not totally esoteric, but yet here I come with this big question. But you asked, how can you uncover that why? What I would like for you to do is I would like for you to think about you achieving all of your wildest dreams with your brand, right? So whatever that brand is that you try to define the why behind, think about in 20, 30, 40 years from now, what is it that you can have achieved? What is the wildest, biggest thing that you can achieve, right? So for Deborah, sorry. It could be, we want to be in every Whole Foods nationwide. We want to have like 20 SKUs. We want to be the only brand that does X in the US, and we want to be wildly loved, right? And then you kind of like go back to like, okay, so what do we need to do now? And what is our big why in order to get there? So to take it up a notch, think about 40 years from now, your brand dies. And this is where it gets weird and esoteric. But think about 40 years from now, your brand dies. It's just gone. It's a freak accident from one day to another. Don't cry. Don't be weird about it. Just say from one day to another, 40 years from now, brand is gone. I'm saying don't be weird about it, but here I go. And then you have like thousands of people at the obituary, at the funeral, right? Like the Queen, right? So you've got tons of people there, and then people will make speeches, right? They will make speeches about how much they love the brand, what the brand meant to them, and what they lost now that your brand isn't in their life, right? And so I think that big problem with tech companies where everyone just talks about their features, and Apple is doing it again now. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, Steve Jobs, where are you, right? It's like, it's so sad seeing Apple right now, but that's a totally different story, right? But it's like, hey, the camera is now like 2 millimeters bigger. Let's have a big press event, like, woo, right? But before it was like, wouldn't it be amazing if you and your grandkids could do so-and-so, and oh, it happens that our iPhone is there and does it, right? Like, it's like telling these stories, and the why goes to these stories. So how have you touched people's hearts? Right? So if you think about 40 years from now, like if your company can achieve all that you can achieve and you help people in so many ways, and you're the only one at that point doing that, right? And people love you and they got so used to having you, just like we have an iPhone, right? If suddenly that is gone, what happens if your iPhone is gone, right? It's not like, oh my God, I don't have that app. No. It's not, oh my God, I can't make a phone call. No, it's right. Like, it's like you lose a connection to something that was bigger than your actual world. And there's like a big story, right? And that needs to be uncovered and then talked in reverse. And so I think for you, if you go that far into the future and say, if I really create that company, and if I have created that company, what would people miss emotionally if I'm suddenly not there anymore? Emotionally. And that is huge, because the why is all about emotion. It's not features and benefits. And that's, and when you get to that, I think then you uncover a brand. And that's where all the excitement lies. And it's not easy. And I usually do it by having a glass of wine or two when I do this for my own things, right? Or by being on an airplane traveling to Europe, and it's 12 hours of people watching stupid movies and me just, like hunkering down on the computer, not having Wi-Fi, and being able to actually write, right? So I think, but it's really that thing, you gotta sit on a rock. You gotta really think about, like, what is it you want to do? And that goes for a tea brand as much as a tax, an accountant. And I really think that's important. I really think it's important for people to think that way, because I also think that it's going to make you enjoy your own startup more, because you feel like you have a bigger purpose. And I mean, that's it, right? Like, we all want to have a bigger purpose. So.
Wow. All right. We have 3 minutes, Fabian, and I don't know if you have wrap-up stuff. So if you do have wrap-up stuff, we should do the wrap-up stuff. If you don't have wrap-up stuff, maybe we have time for one more question. And there's a huge crowd out here, by the way, at the in-person thing. So I'd love to meet y'all in person if any of you are coming into the DC stuff. Fabian, 43 minutes goes by, feels like seconds. So I've enjoyed this conversation. Does anybody else have a last minute question? Last minute question. Okay. What do you think, Fabian? How would you rate this session?
Well, I love rating myself an 11 out of 10 usually, but
out of 10?
maybe this time, no. I mean, what do you mean? How do you rate this? I
don't
love,
know.
Look, I rate it by how many people actually had questions, and I love how different the questions were. I think we really, from service to D2C,
Yeah.
from, like rebranding, I think we touched on so much. And quite frankly, that was my dream with you, Craig, to have people have real questions, and we
Got some
hopefully
good
provide
ones.
some value.
Get 'em
So.
in. Yeah, lot of love in the chat. Thank you, everybody. Super fun. Yeah, we had no idea coming in kind of where these panels go, because we purposely try to leave them open-ended. Otherwise, it's just a presentation. So thanks for being a great audience and for asking great questions. Connect with Fabian on LinkedIn. Check out his stuff, podcast, the website, the books. I own the books. They're fantastic. Fabian, always great. Thank you so much for your time today. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.